Ladies and gentlemen, patch 1.03 just dropped and we got an extremely important weapon change, some map changes, and tons of huge quality of life changes that we have to go over. So we're gonna break it all down for you in a nice and neat package. But before we get started, smash that sub button so you don't miss out on a single bit of juicy info. Now I think that's enough introduction. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it, shall we? Now kicking it off with the biggest change in the entire patch, this is a weapon update, and actually only one weapon was changed. The weapon in question is the Guardian, and the first change was that it was price reduced from 2,700 to 2,500. Now right off the bat, I'm ecstatic about this because this is the exact suggestion I made when talking about the Guardian in our 1.02 tier list. The Guardian has a powerful effective range, but it was just a little bit too pricey for how badly it scaled up against the Vandal and the Phantom. Now, although we got the cheap price tag, its rate of fire was reduced from 6.5 to 4.75, which is a nerf in the rate of fire department, but this really wasn't a gun you wanted to fire quickly anyways, and you really wanted to line up those one-shot headshots because it was lethal from every range as long as you hit the head, even against full armor. Now its penetration power was increased from medium to heavy, which is a fantastic change for the Guardian. That extra firepower can help you wall bang boxes and corners that much better. Now this is an interesting one. The input Q got updated from 0.083 to 0.1175. Now, if you're curious about what input Q delay is, because this is really the first time that they've ever put it in the patch notes, essentially when you're firing a semi-automatic weapon, you can't shoot again until some set time determined by the firing rate. So basically they put in a prevention so that you couldn't just put in a macros or spam fire and then just fire extremely rapid fire, like a semi-automatic weapon firing even faster than full auto on a weapon. So essentially clicking early before you're allowed to fire will do nothing. So what the input Q does is it puts a little bit of leeway in this so that you don't have to actually just be spamming it or be like a robot in order to max out your fire rate. So all in all, what that means is that if you press it a little bit earlier than you can actually fire, it will just fire as soon as possible, and it's not like you have to spam it to get the max rate of fire. So basically increasing this increases that latency slightly so that you're allowed to click a little bit earlier before the gun recognizes that you queued up the action. So essentially imagine it like a stack where if you fired and then you want to fire again, there's a bigger window of time for you to put that action on top of the queue to happen the second that it's allowed to happen. I know that this is pretty complicated, but essentially what this is trying to do is make the gun feel a little bit better even with the slower firing rate. Because you see, based on the developers' notes, what the developers are trying to do with this weapon is they're trying to make it weaker from close range, not giving it as fast a fire rate, not letting you spam it as fast, but they're compensating that with a cheaper price point and the ability to wall bang better. So this is really a mid to long range weapon, and it's a pretty powerful weapon if you're playing at those longer ranges, but there's a liability when enemies come in close because you can't just spam it like you could before. So it's an interesting compromise, and as long as you're playing outside the effective range of these close range weapons, you will have a good time playing this weapon. But the more interesting thing about this weapon to me personally is its use specifically in eco rounds and maybe even anti-eco rounds. It being 2,500 credits, a little bit cheaper, is interesting because if you win that first round and you got a couple of kills and you buy this on the second round, you're going to be able to greatly outdistance any weapon that the enemy would buy in eco besides the martial, but at the very least you're at parity with them. And then if they buy ARs in the preceding round, if you don't want to upgrade, you still have a pretty good weapon for fighting them at the longer ranges. So it's definitely interesting to say the least, and it's probably far better holding an angle than it is swinging an angle, of course, but this is interesting as far as the Guardian's concerned. And if I had to update my tier list, I would definitely put the Guardian in the A tier when I put it in the B tier before. It's a very good weapon, and I think the cheaper price point and the better penetration power only emphasizes its strengths, and it allows you to play in a way that you already wanted to play in the first place with the gun. Now the next updates we have to talk about are map updates. With Haven, there was a spot where you could throw the spike where it was unable to be retrieved. This is no longer going to be the case, so for all the people that lost to not being able to retrieve their own spike, I feel sorry for you, but now they fixed that bug. And then for all maps, they fixed some general bugs. Specifically the ones that I'm excited about are they fixed all the bugs where a Sova sensor arrow was able to go through walls, which was definitely frustrating, but they patched that right out. Now for mode updates, in Spike Rush, they actually added a new orb called Twin Hunters. This is a new orb where if you capture the orb, it releases 2 hunting wolves to track down the 2 nearest enemies. They spawn from the orb's location and they do not change targets after spawning. This is crazy. It's like you spawn these wolves that just chase after the nearest target. It's really funny and it's cool to see just how far they can push Spike Rush. Now the wolves will speed up when they spot an enemy and they'll dash at them when close, slowing and near sighting for 4 seconds upon impact. The wolves have 150 HP and can be damaged, and wolves will time out at 15 seconds or when their target is killed. This is pretty cool to say the least, and I'm excited to see what else they can do with Spike Rush as a mode going forward. Now there was a lot of quality of life changes, but we're gonna talk about all the notable ones that you have to know right off the bat. The first one are surrender changes, and these are gigantic changes. The unrated mode vote requirement in order to surrender is changed from just 100% to only the majority, which is 80%. This is pretty cool because a lot of times in a unranked mode, you were getting stomped, but one person was really stubborn and they didn't want to give up. This allows you in an unrated mode to just say, hey, majority wants to surrender, so we're going to surrender. Now for the competitive mode, it still remains at 100% because it really affects your rank. They don't want to make it so that it's only majority. When one person is playing really well or trying really hard, they don't want to just force you to surrender if the majority of people on your team surrender. Now, a really cool change for both modes is now that you can call a vote to surrender starting with round 5 versus round 8. Now this is amazing because I felt like round 8 was way too long, where you had to actually wait and wait and wait, and you could already be losing, you could already have a DC, there could be so many things that is happening in the game, and you don't want to have to be 0-8 because you have a DC before you can actually surrender. So for competitive and unrated, being able to surrender at round 5 is great news to say the least. There's actually a dedicated surrender button, which is great now. It's going to be a lot easier for you to surrender. And I think all in all, this is a great quality of life change. Now, there's a lot of actually other quality of life changes, minor ones, but you can definitely go check it out in the description down below if you want to see the full patch notes. But the last major one is pressing the escape button while typing in chat box will clear the message, which is a pretty cool quality of life change. I don't know if you've actually run into that, but I have many times, and I'm glad that they fixed it. Now, unfortunately, there are still a few things that they didn't really address in this patch. There's still no hit reg fix that has been going around that people are demanding on the Reddit that needs to be changed. There's still no addressing that. We don't know if they've done it behind the scenes, but honestly, that is probably the most important thing that needs to be fixed. On top of that, a lot of people have been complaining about the grind of the battle pass, that it's a little bit too grindy to justify buying. But what I'm actually more interested in is your opinion. Is there any big changes that you want to see that you need to see right away in order to be happy with the state of Valorant? Do you think any heroes need changes? Do you think that the battle pass is a little bit too grindy? Definitely let me know your opinion in the comments down below. Anyways, I hope this caught you up on all news Valorant. Make sure to smash the like and subscribe button because the YouTube algorithm is my god, okay? I worship to it every night, and it's gonna smite me if you don't smash it right now. So do me a big favor and give me your divine protection with that like button. Anyways, that's all we got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time.